they survived the crash. They were alive on the ice. A rescue plane found them and started bringing them home. But when that plane went back for the others, it never returned. This is the story of a rescue mission over Greenland that ended in one of the strangest disappearances of World War II. On November 29, 1942, a small rescue aircraft was lowered from the deck of a Coast Guard cutter in the freezing waters off Greenland. On board were two men, a pilot and a radio operator. Their mission was simple: fly over the Greenland ice cap and locate the survivors of a crashed bomber and bring them home. The first rescue flight made it back safely. But when the aircraft returned the next morning to save the remaining survivors, it vanished. The plane, the crew, gone without a trace. More than 80 years later, the wreckage of that rescue aircraft has never been found. In the early years of World War II, Greenland became an unexpectedly important battlefield. You see, aircraft traveling between North America and Europe often flew through the Arctic. But the route was dangerous. Blizzards could appear suddenly. Navigation, definitely primitive, and the landing fields were few. In November of 1942, a Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress encountered severe weather while flying over Greenland. Unable to find its destination through the storm, the bomber's crew was forced to make an emergency landing on the ice cap. Now, the landing was rough, but the crew survived. Now they faced a new danger: temperatures well below zero, blowing snow, and a vast wilderness of ice stretching for hundreds of miles. Rescue would have to come quickly. Patrolling nearby waters was the Coast Guard cutter USCGC Northland. During the war, ships like Northland played an important role in Arctic operations. They guarded the Greenland coast, hunted German weather stations, and helped rescue downed airmen. But Northland carried something else that made it uniquely suited for rescue missions: a small amphibious aircraft. The Grumman J2F Duck. Now, the Duck was an unusual aircraft. It was part airplane, part boat. It could take off from the ocean or land on ice and snow. For Arctic rescues, it was one of the few aircraft capable of reaching stranded crews. When the distress call came from the B-17 survivors, the crew of Northland prepared the Duck for flight. Two men climbed aboard. The pilot, Lieutenant John Pritchard, 28 years old, from Redfield, South Dakota, and radio man First Class Benjamin Bottoms from Cumming, Georgia, 29 years old. The crew of the Coast Guard cutter Northland then lowered the small aircraft from the cutter's deck into the water.
The plane started its engine, lifted off from the water, and headed towards the ice cap.
Now, finding the crashed bomber on Greenland's ice cap was not going to be easy. The Arctic landscape offered almost no landmarks, just endless white snow and blowing wind.
But eventually, the crew of the Duck spotted the wrecked bomber below. They circled. The only problem was the fact that the Arctic glacier they had been flying over was too rough to land. So they had no choice but to carefully bring the aircraft down onto the ice nearly 4 miles from the B-17's crash site. The stranded airmen had been waiting in the freezing wind. But now that rescue had apparently arrived, it was 4 miles away. The crew of the Grumman Duck hiked over treacherous terrain, but eventually made it to the site of the crashed B-17 bomber. However, the small amphibious aircraft could only carry a limited number of passengers, so the rescue had to happen in stages. The Duck lifted off again, carrying 2 of the survivors back to the Coast Guard cutter Northland. The mission had been a success, but there were still men stranded on the ice. The Grumman Duck would have to return. The following morning, the Grumman Duck prepared for another rescue flight. The same 2 crew members climbed aboard. Once again, the crew of the Coast Guard cutter lowered the aircraft into the water. And once again, it started its engine and headed towards the ice cap. In this image, you can see the first 2 crew members of the B-17 bomber rescued the day before, standing on the deck of the Northland, seeing Pritchard and Bottoms off to rescue their fellow crew members.
Their mission was simple: pick up the remaining survivors and bring them home. But this time the aircraft never returned.
This photo of the aircraft, taken that fateful day as it departed the Coast Guard cutter Northland, was the last time anyone saw them. Hours passed, then days. The Grumman Duck had disappeared somewhere over the vast Greenland ice. Search aircraft scanned the region. Crews looked for wreckage, smoke, any signs or signals from the missing plane. But the Arctic revealed nothing. The rescue aircraft and the 3 men aboard had vanished. In the decades after the war, the disappearance of the Grumman Duck became one of the enduring mysteries of Arctic aviation. Search teams attempted to locate the missing aircraft. Expeditions returned to Greenland hoping to find clues. Historians retraced the flight path. Some believe the aircraft crashed in bad weather. Others suspected the plane may have landed safely on the ice cap before being buried under decades of drifting snow.
Greenland's ice is constantly moving. Aircraft that crash on the surface can slowly disappear beneath the glacier. Over time, they could be carried hundreds of miles away or buried hundreds of feet below the surface. That possibility means the lost duck may still be there, hidden somewhere beneath the ice.